Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our second quarterly Funding Focus event of 2021. And there's something new about this one because normally we've run our events at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but we've had feedback from some of our fans and followers in Southeast Asia and Australia saying that that's kind of difficult because 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the UK varies anywhere from about midnight until about 4 o'clock in the morning, depending where they are. And so we've decided to run this event in the morning UK time so that our friends and followers in Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand can actually participate without it having them to wake up in the middle of the night. So welcome everybody in Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand. It's wonderful to have you here. We're going to slightly rejig our agenda this morning because our first speaker has another commitment in half an hour. So normally I would do an introduction and then we'll introduce the speaker and carry on. But I'm going to hand over now to Thibaut, and he will introduce our first speaker, Olga. And then after that, I'll do my introductory remarks, and then we'll move into a breakout session. So Thibaut, over to you.
I believe it's Taryn who's
actually me.
Oh, excuse me, Taryn. My apologies.
That's okay. That's okay. Morning, everyone. So I'd just like to welcome our first speaker this morning. She's a global innovation expert specializing in women and finance, sustainability, and gender smart investing. Please welcome the award-winning innovative fintech edtech entrepreneur and co-founder of our own startup, Olga Miller.
Yay, what an introduction. Oh my God, and it's early morning here in Zurich. Hey, welcome and hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. So what is it that I can tell you? I think, David, you probably had a lot of questions for me, but maybe I'm just going to quickly start to give you an overview of what is it that I really do. Yes, so please. I am the co-founder of SmartPurse, which is a financial health platform that connects women and financial services. And we do that through three means. We provide a lot of inspiration for women to figure out that money is really important and to find really engaging ways to sort of start to deal with money. We provide a whole array of financial education methods, starting from an app to a digital money school to courses, events, whatever have you, on a broad variety of subjects. From how to negotiate your pay down to how to invest sustainably in cryptocurrencies. And ultimately, we facilitate a thoughtful connection, a connection between the women that have learned about money and financial services. That can be financial services professionals, so experts specializing in financial planning, in divorce, in financial coaching and financial health, as well as potentially providers that provide the digital solutions of finance, so such as the new fintechs or sustainable investing solutions. We are, and that brings me, I think, almost to the focus of this session, a female-founded venture that acts in financial services and has a female market value proposition. Now, on that premise, imagine what it meant to go fundraising starting 2 weeks down into lockdown, which is what I did last year. It was an incredibly interesting experience because I think at the starting point, nobody said that this would even be remotely possible. Because of all of the biases that are in the fundraising system, because of the lack of awareness why such a solution would be needed. And we basically were kind of declared dead before we even started. And yet we still got there and still exist. David, your questions.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Olga. Now, you have a background in financial services and have worked as an investment banker before. So you kind of know what it's like to sit on both sides of the table when it comes to fundraising discussions. I'd love to get your perspective as a female investment banker, how you found that side of the transaction, and then how you were able to apply that knowledge to as a female founder seeking funding.
So my unbiased view is that gender doesn't necessarily matter when it comes to looking at your investor, okay? When you want to be successful in funding, in fundraising, number one is to define who are the investors you are looking for, because different investors will have different ways how they assess your startup. So if you are looking at raising from a venture capitalist, it will be different multiples and a different process than if you are going down the angel investment route, or if you are seeking capital from the different private individuals that might be there. I have personally, but that's a very personal observation, not observed many gender differences when you pitch your startup EC to VC founders or to angel founders. They will be looking at who has funded your startup? Is the business idea valuable? Do you have a scalable business model? And do I believe, or as an investor, that you will get it off the ground? These are also the factors that I would look for as an investor and as a person. Are they different if I was a man or if I had a completely different affinity to what I was? I think not. It's just common business practice.
Okay, very interesting. And I accept what you're saying. I think, unfortunately, the statistics that are published would show that you're one of the outliers as opposed to part of the mainstream, just on the basis of all of the reports I've seen published in the US, the UK, around Europe, Australia, that show there is still a very distinct focus that female founders are not raising the share of capital based on the number of pitches they're submitting and all of that.
You know, absolutely. And I think we just have to be aware that these biases exist, right? I think the investor will not assess you based on the fact whether you are a man or a woman, most likely consciously. But what they will do is to have all of these unconscious biases that we all are aware of, where language plays a role, where, you know, the same pitch delivered by a man and a woman actually got, you know, full funding and even more capital if it was delivered by a man. And if it was delivered by the woman, only a fraction of the capital. There is a very impressive Harvard study on that, right? And it's exactly the same pitch. I think we have to be aware that all of these biases exist and are out there in the system. But if I put myself into the shoes of being a woman and a female investor, I think I personally, in first and utmost, wouldn't be looking for gender. I would be looking for the solution. What has happened with us in SmartPurse is what we observe. Naturally, we've been pitching our solution to rooms full of male investors, of course, because there are not that women out there, is that it wasn't that much about us being a woman that potentially led to a negative response, but it was the nature of our solution. So multiple times did we hear and say, well, we think there is not a big enough market out there for what you are doing, which is kind of surprising given the fact that it is a 700 billion opportunity for financial services to serve female clients well. But this type of stuff we did experience.
51% of the global population.
Yeah. And this type of stuff we did experience. We also did experience, of course, in kind of pitching contests. You know, the jury has 9 members, 3 are women, 6 are men. And then the feedback was, well, you didn't make it into the accelerator because the man didn't see the need for a women-focused solution. But that had nothing to do with me as a person. I never took that personally. I took it more in a sportive aspect and say, well, then, you know, certain people don't believe in the market potential of what I'm doing here. And that's fair enough, right? And I think this is where you kind of need to have the differentiation, or at least I chose for myself to have the differentiation to say, look, this type of feedback, I get it. Everybody is free to make his or her own opinion, right? And if there are investors out there that believe that the market potential for what we are doing is not big enough, or the revenue potential is not sound enough, that's fair feedback. Yep. Probably the same would happen if I was to pitch, I don't know, some stellar solution in biotechnology, right? And my market sizing wasn't right.
Yeah.
So I think the message from that is to kind of differentiate what is the feedback you're getting on your solution versus what is the feedback that you're getting on yourself as a founder, right? And not get hooked up about this saying, oh God, I'm a woman or I'm a minority founder and therefore I don't stand a chance. You do stand a chance if your solution is great. It just takes a lot more persistence, right? That was the other thing I have observed, that, you know, a very dear friend of mine that I had sounded out before entering this fundraising cycle, she said, Olga, stop crying, okay? Getting no's is a completely good part of the process. Just put together your list and go pitching and pitch as long as you are successful. And I think minority founders just have to be prepared that we need to demonstrate a lot more persistence and probably also a lot more excellence on how we present our solutions.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. It's a reflection that there are biases out in the marketplace, and you know, one of our long-term aims at Funding Focus is to address those biases and level the playing field. But equally, we know that that's going to take a long time, and so having that awareness going into the pitching environment is really helpful to say, yes, it's an uneven playing field, and I have to deal with that. Therefore, I have to be more prepared. I have to be more on top of my numbers. I have to be more on top of my market, and I have to be confident in my product. But I think that's absolutely right. And you know, for the benefit of our audience, to be aware of that and to take out and say, it's not about me. It's about the investor not getting the pitch. So where is it not been delivered, or where is it not been? Yeah, no, I that's a really refreshing outlook to take. So thank you very much for that. So with that in mind, what would be, based on the experience that you had, and you've successfully raised angel funding from, I think, 4 investors, right?
Yeah, we have 6 investors right now. Yeah, we had a very first round coming from 4 investors, and all of them, or the majority of them, was men, actually, that believed in the cause and in the societal difference. And also there, very clear seeing the market potential. Okay, so they basically looked at it in the same way like I was describing. I would look at any investment to say, okay, we see 2 women with 2 completely different competencies. One knows women and how to build large-scale communities and can dash out beautiful, non-patronizing language. That would be Jude, not me, okay? And there is the other woman that knows financial services in and out and has developed a whole successful women market go-to strategy for a bank already. We believe the market is big enough, and we believe in these 2 women. And that's what made them sign up. And then last year, that has given us some very, very small seed money to kind of sharpen the concept and go out. And then last year, basically, we went out on a round where we said, okay, we would love to raise enough money in order to kind of get us to the next stage, to professionalize the solution, to prove the product market fit to the extent we are able to prove it, and kind of professionalize our tech. And initially, our round was planned to be 1 million British pounds. And then lockdown came, everything shut down. We went out with all the hindrances, would have found the capital, more capital than we needed. And because of lockdown, did the recalculations and said, you know what, we're going to take in less capital than we could have, work through the year and then go on another round so that we can ramp up the valuation of the company.
Yeah.
And so that capital, by the way, you will be interested in, the majority of it has come from one stellar angel investor who happens to be a woman who absolutely understands what we are about, shares the vision, and she's like, oh my God, I really want to partner on this. We've been very lucky. And the rest has come from the existing investors. So I think that's kind of our story. Now you will ask, okay, so how did we find that magic investor and that magic lady? It was actually through the personal connections. It was, I also reached out, and Jude reached out to people that we had known before that would know our work. And that maybe brings me to my second tip for this talk. As we all know, they are biases and they might be people that won't get you. Of course, going after the low-hanging fruits with people you know, keeping connections active, finding and seeking out actively investors that make it their mantra to support diversity in the funding process, is a lot more enjoyable than going and submitting your pitch deck to a standard massive accelerator, knowing that you potentially might not get the right answer. Yeah. So we followed a two-route path, distinct research on where are the funds, the VCs, the angels that make diversity in finance their calls, because of course that is the closest to our vision and what we are trying to achieve. And at the same time, last year, what I did was very consciously expose myself to some of the larger accelerators and different funds, not expecting that I would get money, but I wanted to get the feedback.
Right.
Why? Because the feedback helps you to make your pitch and your solution better. For me, it was a development exercise. And I very much appreciate everybody's feedback. If somebody gives you feedback, it means people care. They want you to be better. And for me, as tiring as it is to deal with all of that response, if you have the strength to embrace it, you will emerge with a far more sharpened and better venture. So I do not regret having done that. And I'm going to do the same now on our next funding round. Fantastic. And then the one thing I just wanted to add, and then I'm going to shut up, David, and let you ask the question, is that there is also a positive side of the coin, where being a woman or being a minority founder, whatever makes you being the minority, can turn into an absolutely unfair advantage at these times, because people do realize that, you know, there needs to be more diversity in the system, and therefore actually being different can be an accelerator for you. So to give you one example, I'm going to be pitching in Switzerland at the Startup Battle semifinals, and hopefully we'll make it to the finals. I'm the only woman in the fintech track, right? Or at least to my knowledge, I'm the only woman. Yeah. And it will come down to the business case, but also is 9 startups in the semifinals. Can I be good enough? And can I make me being different and being a woman my advantage? If I can, oh hell, I'm going to do it. Why not? No shame here, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely brilliant, and the very best of luck with that. If I was able to travel, I'd come, but going to Switzerland right now means going into quarantine. So I will wish you all the best from the distance, and if it's being done virtually, I'll see if I can check in and watch your pitch. Thank you for all of that, Olga. A couple of points I just wanted to pick up on. I loved what you said about turning diversity into a strength, and what it reminds me of one of the speakers that we had at our last annual conference in November, a young Black gentleman called Sam Okasawa. And he did a talk which was all about what he called the advantages of being disadvantaged. And so much of that is about what goes on up here, because, you know, we might go out and think, oh, well, I'm a woman or I'm a minority or something, therefore it's harder. But actually, if you take the position that you've had, which I think is wonderful, and say, how can I turn that into a strength? How can I turn that into something that differentiates me from everybody else who might look the same? So I think that's a really, really valuable piece of advice for people going forward in their pitching. The other thing I'd ask you about was, in the context of finding those investors, because that's a question that a lot of people are asking me, is, you know, how do you go out and find them? And you know, it's about networking, it's about doing your research, it's about searching, talking to people you know, asking for introductions. But I'm just curious on any other tips or advice that you would give to our audience on how to find the right kind of investor.
So I think it was all that you just mentioned, right? And it is just work, right? So searching through Crunchbase and searching through LinkedIn connections, searching through the different funds, right? Because not everybody is labeled as I'm a diversity, or in my case now, women-friendly, women-focused investor. So it just means doing the legwork. The one thing that I can add as a tip is I ask everybody who has given me a no, do you know of a person that might be interested?
Yes.
Kind of, I get that it might not be the right thing for you. Give me the one thing I should improve. And would you know of any people that might be interested? And would you mind making an introduction? And actually, that has borne some very interesting connections and some very interesting insights that I personally would have never thought about, right? So I always take a no also, I mean, it sounds stupid, pardon me, everybody listening, but almost like a positive no. It's like, let's not, so if it is a no, let's at least again get the maximum out of it, right? Which is good feedback that will make you better, potentially a recommendation, at least understanding why, some of these things. And I also ask, and on every no, is like, okay, understanding the why, shall we come back next year, right? Yeah. And in many cases, it actually was said, yes, come back next year because we felt your valuation is too high, or we really liked it, but we only invest once you have made so and so much revenue, or we would have needed to see this or that, which is kind of stuff you otherwise don't get out. Yeah. So that has helped.
That's absolutely true, and I would support 100% what you're saying there, and certainly in the work I do with clients on fundraising, it's the same story, and in so many cases, particularly in the venture capital world, you know, you might send your pitch deck out to 50 investors, and you might only get 10 response, and 40 of them just don't bother to respond. That's a separate issue. I think that's bad, but that's a separate issue. But from the 10 who do respond, even if all 10 of them say no, the fact that they've taken the time to read what you've submitted, look at it, think about it, talk to colleagues, and come back and say, you know, no thanks, it's not for us because of reason X, Y, Z, or you're too early, or our minimum check size is, you know, double what you're asking for, or your valuation isn't right. But yeah, and where you've taken it to the next level is, don't just stop at the, oh, that was a rejection, but actually take it back, thank them for their input, thank them for taking the time, and then, as you said, ask them, is there anyone else that you think we should talk to? And would you make that introduction? Because that's so powerful, because that enables you not only to expand your network, but also it enables you to get into other people who, those, you know, I mean, the investment community is so small, and most of them know each other. So they know who's doing what. And if Joe Bloggs introduces Fred Smith to Olga Miller, then all of a sudden Olga Miller's got a much better opportunity with Fred Smith than if she were to just approach him directly cold without any kind of contact. So no, that's a absolutely brilliant suggestion, and one that I'm sure our audience will take on. I'd like to open it up to the audience and see if anyone else has any questions. We're a small group this morning, but if anyone has a question, please feel free to either raise your digital hand or take yourself off mute and just say, I have a question, and we'll take it. So I see a few friendly faces in the audience. Any questions?
Hi, I have a question.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sanjana.
Yeah, so hi, Olga. I'm also based in Zurich. So I found that when pitching my solution, which is also female focused to investors, there's like a lack of interest. So whether it's a competition or, and I don't know, I'm also minority and a woman. So the thing is, I find that kind of difficult to overcome. So I know you mentioned it in your, you know, in what you said, but how should one go about it then?
Yeah, I think that is a general problem. I had the problem as well, right? Depending on where you are active. So if your solution, for instance, is in finance, like mine is, or in education, because my thing is a hybrid, you will get that angle and say, you know, I'm not interested in something around women. And I think then the only thing is to try to convince, or for certain investors, develop a different pitch, right? So for instance, if it is like a super, I don't know, technology affine investors, in our case, we pitched a different angle of the solution. It's like we developing a great content platform that helps people to understand money better. We have started with the women, and it's infinitively scalable also to other audiences. That was one way how we tried to overcome this. But I think, and of course, it helps if your solution is versatile in that respect, which we were lucky enough that it was, right? If you have multiple revenue streams, then it helps. You can multi-pitch. But what I also observe is that, you know, even 3 years ago, 4 years ago, there was very little awareness about the potential of the female market. That is slowly changing, but is only changing slowly. So having really good market sizing figures in terms of, you know, how big is your addressable market? How big is the potential market? How do you intend to get traction? I think is something that I have found investors almost go like, oh my God, I didn't look at it this way, but hey, yes, these stats. And it's kind of a revealing moment. So that has helped us. Okay. And the final thing I wanted to mention, and links to the point you were making before, David, is I think it's worth putting time into your pitch deck as a minority founder, really to have like these highlights that investors like to see springing out. It was one of my big learnings that basically the funding deck, the teaser deck almost really is a teaser and not necessarily has to give away everything about the solution. It's only there designed to get you that meeting. And I was failing on that at the beginning last year and still fail now because I'm kind of a detailed focused person. So I need to explain everything to everybody in all its glory and detail, which actually is not required. So if you have kind of a high level deck as a minority founder, I think you also need to have the courage to brag, right? And by bragging, I mean that finds the unique stuff that makes you think unique, including yourself, and don't shy away from showing it. Because on myself, I have experienced that I've always been very shy about this. Like, you know, we never went out and say they are two women, one has already changed the world and one changed a big bank and now we're building something new, generates a different appeal than we think that women need to learn more about money. I think you kind of see the difference.
Right,
and that for me, however, took a lot of personal strength because, oh boy, I'm so not wired that way.
Right. I know. Yeah, thanks. That's great advice. Thank you.
Thanks, Olga. I want to pick up on two things there from what you said. And let me just double check, because I know you've got a hard time commitment. How are you?
Can put in another 5. That's okay if there are more questions.
Okay, super. So two questions. Well, one's a comment and one's the question. So I'll start with the comment, which was just picking up on what you said about pitching. And I think that's something that so many people need to be aware of. The goal of a pitch is to get the meeting. The goal of the goal of your first pitch is to get a meeting or a call or a Zoom or a whatever. So you want to put in enough information that gives the recipient interest and thinks, hey, I want to know more about this, without necessarily overloading them with everything. And, you know, I've seen some pitch decks that are, you know, 30, 40 slides, and that's way too long for an early thing. But I think for anytime a founder is pitching, they need to go into that pitch experience thinking, what is the goal of this pitch? And whether it's to get an invitation to an in-person meeting or an invitation to a presentation or something like that, then just be aware of what it is that you're pitching for. So that was my comment. I've had a question through from someone in the audience just saying, on the topic of pitch decks, how important would you say is a good design to a pitch deck?
I think the design is important nowadays. I think it's like, I look at it like an extended business card. So the design is important. I think, and again, I am not a pitching expert, right? They are people that know this down to an art, how to pitch a startup, where you can get, I think, at very reasonable price or even for free, a lot of coaching on this. And I actually do encourage everybody to use the knowledge sources to get coaching on doing good pitching, because it has evolved into an art. And as it has evolved into an art, the standards of what investors see and expect to see has risen. And therefore it is time and potentially a little bit of money well invested. And for me, that also goes to the design. That said, don't despair, right? Can you get away with a well-done pitch deck done, for instance, with Canva that has tons of templates and tons of ideas? Of course you can. You don't need to have every minuscule thing designed. But I think that the look of the whole thing shows that you care, and it's not entirely to be neglected.
Yep. Thanks for that. And just picking up, so Sapna saying, as a brand consultant, she would say first impressions are everything. So that's good. Another question come through. As a minority founder in the finance sector, which is a highly regulated area, have you found adversity in getting regulation for SmartPurse?
We got the question a lot, and what we did was to anticipate that question. So SmartPurse is part of in the UK of the FCA. It's called FCA Startup Unit, where they basically advise you on how to interpret the rule book, which is a fabulous service by the FCA. Quite a long application process to get there, but then you get the FCA specialists that look at your solution, and depending on what you want, if you want to be regulated, they'll help you to achieve that, or at least get the process right. And if, like in our case, you want to know where the boundaries are so that you wouldn't step into regulation, because we are an impartial financial educator, not an investment provider, they provided stellar feedback on what it is that we need to do and where the boundaries are. But addressing regulation in financial services, very important, and it has helped a great deal to do that properly.
Yep. Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. Any last questions from the audience? Either put it into the chat or just put yourself on mute, or unmute yourself and just ask.
I've got one, which is just for personal interest. So earlier you said one of the things you do is help people invest sustainably in cryptocurrency. I wondered if you had any quick tips on that.
Probably not as quick as I could share in the next 2 minutes, but I think that sustainability in crypto is like one of these undetected fields, and there are ways how you can choose your cryptocurrencies that do not necessarily rely on mining. Then obviously it might have an impact on what currency it is and your revenue that you might get from that. And also some very interesting developments that are happening to make the whole crypto world more sustainable. So almost kind of looking at crypto with a sustainability lens is something I take deep personal passion in, because it's from sustainable investing is where I have come from, and very happy to exchange on that separately if we want to. But it's a nascent field, and I find it very fascinating. Will you find the perfect solution? No, of course you won't, but probably some solutions that already might go in the right direction.
Fabulous. Olga, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And we wish you all the best with SmartPurse and with your next round, and we'll keep in touch, and I'll watch out for you at the startup battle in Bern.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.